Hello, welcome back to another day in the arena. It is day 3 in the adventures of young CGB. So, this is our free-to-play account where we're seeing just how well and how much we can do with the free-to-play account. Trying to give you guys a demonstration of how to get the best MTG arena experience by putting in 0 dimes. 0 dimes! It's a reference I think like 2 of you out there might get. Let me know. All right, so let's look over our login today. We're going to try to bounce back from a pretty tough day yesterday, get some wins. We've got some quests. Deal 50 damage. All right, I think that if we're doing things well, that's what we'll do. 250 gold is our win bonus. This goes up to, like, I think your first 4 or 5 wins include some amount of gold. So it's most important to get 4 or 5 wins to start your day. We need 2 more wins for another pack. We also have a 750 gold quest to cast 30 white or black spells. And we have a 500 gold quest to cast 20 blue or black spells. The common element here is black, so I think it's a perfect day to pull out our black starter deck. Let me make sure I've got my audio where I want it. Yeah, the music's on. Sometimes the music in Arena, it's so quiet or it just kind of fades away and you're like, what happened? All right, so looking at this mono black deck, this is something I encourage you to do all the time. I'm going to look through my collection for any cards I may have unlocked recently that may make me want to, that I may want to put in the deck. It's important, in my opinion, to always keep your decks fresh, keep your mind fresh, keep looking for cards that you'd like to try. And when comparing them to the cards that you'd take out, try to make sure that you're replacing it with cards that do what you need to do and are of a similar power level. You don't want to replace for something, for example, a card like Abnormal Endurance, which is just kind of a marginal card. Until in the current turn, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains. When this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped. It sounds interesting as a way to save your creature, but then you think about it, what if we just played another creature for 2 mana? Because if we don't have a creature to play for 2 mana, we'd rather just have another threat. Why replace some of our very cheap creatures when we could just play other good creatures in that spot? So just the kind of thing that goes through my mind. So one card we've unlocked is Graveyard Marshal. 2 mana 3/2 is definitely on par with this kind of aggressive cheap creature strategy that we're working on. So I'm going to add that. Let's see if there's anything else. There are still 2 Death Barons, but we still don't, in my opinion, have enough zombies. Most of the creatures here are not zombies, so I don't think Death Baron is right for the deck yet. I hope we can unlock more zombies as we go. A card a lot of people like is Lost Legacy. This is definitely, though, a sideboard card. You don't want to play this in a lot of matchups, especially when you're an attacking deck. You're just trying to beat your opponent down as quickly as you can. Lost Legacy doesn't usually help with that. It takes cards out of the deck, but not necessarily out of the hand, and that's a big difference. Let's look around and see if there's anything else here. As we get into the more expensive cards, it's less likely that you'll find something. While Demon Lord Belzenlock is an exciting mythic, and so is Noxious Gearhulk and Nightmare, we're trying to end the game well before that point of the game. So, let's see. I don't think we have nearly enough artifacts to rely on a card like the Herald of Anguish that I passed. Now, one card we're not playing is Heart of Kiran, and the main reason was I didn't have enough 3-power creatures to crew it. Graveyard Marshal, Syndicate Trafficker, and Scrapheap Scrounger now are in the deck. It makes me wonder if I can and should run 1 Heart of Kiran, but we probably don't want 3 or 4 or anything like that because we still, quite honestly, don't have enough creatures of that power. But as we add more to them, it might become a stronger card as we go. Heart of Kiran, of course, an amazing card, to be honest. And in the land category, did we find any new lands? I don't see anything for a mono black. So let's see here. What could we cut? One card that doesn't really fit is Gonti. It's a value card, not an aggressive card. So that strikes me as a card that could be cut for better aggressive threats. And now that we are down on 4-drop, and we have only a 1 4-drop, 1 5-drop, and a bunch of Walking Ballistas, I don't think we need this many lands. So I'm going to cut a land. I think I'm actually going to cut the Aether Hub because you never want to draw 2 of them and no swamps. So I'm going to reduce the odds of that ever happening by cutting one of the Aether Hubs. I may still cut another one. This is 23 lands for this deck. It is a little mana hungry, but not that much. I mean, we have extra things to do with our lands in the form of Walking Ballista, getting back Scrapheap Scrounger, making dorks with Graveyard Marshal, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't maybe cut a little more. So as much as I love Sky Sovereign, I think what I want to do is actually take it out and reduce the mana count even more. And I think 2 Aether Hubs is the sweet spot where we're really relying on every card that we draw, every land that we draw to be effective. I think 2 makes it very unlikely that you'll draw them both in the same game while still having a chance at getting that sweet opening with the Glint-Sleeve Siphoner. So that took us down to 58 cards. I think I can raise my Heart of Kiran count. And let's see if we can find one more like kind of low to the ground aggressive thing. The Sky Sovereign, I might end up missing it because it is a very strong like mid-range-ish card. If our game gets to the mid-range, it's nice to have something to do. And now we do have more artifacts, which makes me think about Herald of Anguish, but I still don't think we're ever going to cast it for less than 5. So I don't think that makes for a good card. So what's a card we can throw into the deck? Exile's a colorless creature and you gain life equal to its toughness. I just don't think that that is popular enough. We could have an Essence Extraction, one more removal spell. I'd like to have something that hits a little harder, though. Hitting the hand, though, does sound really nice. I wish that Lost Legacy let you look at the hand first, or that we had anything that helped you look at the hand. It would be really nice to have any way to get to 3 power, but I don't quite see it. Harsh Scrutiny as a discard card isn't a very good one. Taking a creature out of the hand, we may as well just play a removal spell. It's much more flexible. I think what I'm actually going to try here is this card, Infernal Scarring, which I can compare to some instants from earlier, but what I like about Infernal Scarring is it lets your creature crew the Heart of Kiran every turn if you need to. Oh, this is a 3/1. It enters the battlefield tapped, but it has Menace if you control an artifact. That may be a significantly better one. Entering the battlefield tapped is bad with other vehicles. This is pretty tough. I think with all the Magma Sprays and Vraska's Contempts running around, that makes Infernal Scarring worse. I think I'll try out one of these Bruisers. Alright. I don't love having it in the deck, and I would definitely prefer some of these rares like Syndicate Trafficker or Graveyard Marshal, but you play with what you got. Alright. So we're much lower to the ground. Let's try this out. It's going to cast more spells and hopefully deal more damage faster. So in hindsight, thinking about my last video, I should have entered Brewer's Delight. There's always going to be some special event here, and it's a good idea to talk about which ones we should do. We should definitely do some Brewer's Delight. So we don't have the gems, but we'll pay the gold and jump in. This is a good opportunity to acquire some of the jankier cards that you don't like to spend wild cards on at all, while also checking off quests. So the cards might be janky, but they're not weak. You can still, like, Cat deck, Storm deck, Revel in Riches is probably the bad one, but the Cats in the Storm deck, if we win some of those cards, they're legitimately threatening and can win you games in Quick Constructed. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, just wait. We'll have to see what we actually win in this Brewer's Delight to figure out what we're really talking about. But primarily, the reason we're running this deck today is for the quests. We have a lot of quests that can pay off a lot of gold if we pick up some wins and cast these spells. And we've got a 1-drop, we've got a 2-drop, and if we draw a land, we got a 3-drop. This hand is great. And it looks like our opponent's also on the black quests. Vicious Conquistador is a card I would run in this deck. It's an uncommon vampire soldier, I believe from Ixalan. And when it attacks, each opponent loses 1 life, so it's essentially like a 2-power creature. So this is getting scary because we're on the draw, and our opponent's already played 2 very threatening cards. So the Dhund Operative can try to block the Conquistador, so can the Diregraf Ghoul. The Heart of Kiran can't block yet, so I think I want to play this Operative, and I think we are not the beatdown, therefore I'm going to say go. Since we're on the draw, I think we were looking for a longer game. Our opponent may also be like a more teched out, curved out black deck than we are. They may have put some wild cards into this. A card that might really help here is Aethersphere Harvester, and drawing removal spells like our 4 Fatal Pushes would be nice as well. Well, our opponent's already burned 2 removal spells on our 1-drop and our 2-drop to get their damage in. If we can get some bodies and get them to stick, we'll be in an okay spot. There's a Harvester. How do we want to handle things? We're going to take another pretty big hit if we play the Harvester this turn, but our other cards don't make a lot of sense, so let's do it. We'll be in a lot of trouble if our opponent has another Cast Down, or a way to get Revolt for their Fatal Push. But if not, this is going to be pretty tough to deal with. Skymarch Bloodletter. It's kind of a drain you, and then our opponent's going to swing in. It's an interesting addition to the black aggro deck. I don't know if I'd run it. Even if I had it. So that's a little bit different. Okay, this is good because it fills our 1-drop curve. The other question is, what creature do we play? Right now the Ballista can't trade for anything, so I want to save it for later, but Scrapheap Scrounger can't really do anything at all. Having this on the battlefield gives us an option to draw, and it makes more energy. I don't know that I'll be taking that option since our life total is so low, but we'll get that on the battlefield, and we'll get this Diregraf Ghoul on the battlefield. We'll say go, and we're hoping our opponent doesn't have another perfect instant speed removal spell for this Harvester, so we can give them a very tough attack. There's a Chupacabra. That's a very negative experience for me, but it's not going to stop the Harvester. So we wait till they target the Glint-Sleeve Siphoner. We crew the Harvester. So now we have a blocker for the rest of the turn. It will uncrew at the end of turn, but then we'll play a different card. Yep, the opponent can't attack in because it's a 3/5. It can gain lifelink. It kind of snuffs our opponent's attack. I still want to hang on to these Ballistas. I want to play them for 2, because once they're down for 2, even if they're about to die, they can trade with another threat of my opponent's. So here's our Scrounger, and we'll say go. Our opponent draws another land. At this point, I don't think extra lands are good for them. Maybe they have some 5-drops in there. Maybe not. So, but right now I'm pretty happy. Okay, they're going to walk the plank. Let's crew. And again, if our opponent attacks, they have to go through the Harvester, which can gain some life. Our opponent's coming in hot. Yep. So, do they have a creature in their graveyard? No, they do not. So right now, blocking the Scrounger is all right. It also prevents the most damage. Let's look at the rest of the board. What else is coming through is for 6, but we gain 3 life from the Harvester, so we're not dead. Since our opponent can't get the Scrounger back now, I think that blocking the Scrounger is a good idea. So we'll make lifelink. So we go to 4 instead of dead because we gain 3 life because of our Harvester. You pay an energy each time for it, so as you can see, we have 2 more times that we can activate that. Another Siphoner off the top, though. It makes an energy when it enters the battlefield. Takes us back up to 3, so we can keep gaining life, fighting off these attacks. Our opponent draws Cradle of the Accursed, which they can sacrifice for a 2/2 zombie. It's a utility land, and it's like they drew a 4-mana 2/2 zombie. And our opponent looks like they are determined to push through this, which makes sense, I guess, because they have a Scrapheap Scrounger they can also get back. So let's crew here. I'm planning to let my Glint-Sleeve Siphoner die. At this point, drawing cards with it, paying life for cards is a very poor idea. And we'll take out the Conquistador. because the Conquistador does 1 damage to us whether we block it or not, so it does prevent some future damage that can happen. Like if we ended up at 1 life, the Conquistador could just attack. The ability of when it attacks, each opponent loses 1 life would trigger, and we couldn't block it. So we stay at 4. Our opponent's going to make a 2/2 here with Cradle of the Accursed, I think, and get back their Scrounger. Ooh, they did not. I believe this says you can only do it as a sorcery. So when a card says activate this ability only at a time when you could cast a sorcery, it means you can't do it on your opponent's turn. So I think our opponent's going to miss an opportunity there. And there's the land at long last that we can start playing out these wonderful Walking Ballistas. Our opponent, though, is going to start getting back Scrapheap Scrounger. We'll need the Harvester to survive to keep blocking it. Now, can I start attacking my opponent? I think that's still too early. Don't think we have that option right now. So Scrapheap Scrounger, 1 and a black, exile a creature card from your graveyard, return it from the graveyard to the battlefield. Doing it on your opponent's end step is a good way to dodge sorcery speed removal, like Walk the Plank. If the opponent has a removal spell for the Scrounger or a sweeper like a Fumigate that destroys all creatures, they can't kill the Scrounger with it if you wait till the very end of their turn. So like you mark a spot up here and then do it, which is one of the reasons that Scrapheap Scrounger is a stupidly good card. Now the opponents decide not to attack. It's probably a good call. Maybe they'll use this Cradle of the Accursed now. Yep, here it comes. Another Glint-Sleeve Siphoner. Well, it does keep the energy going, and the energy can either draw us cards and gain us life with this Harvester, but there are other options, such as playing another Ballista, which it might be the safest way. Another interesting choice is to pump our Ballista. But I think playing a second Ballista is a better call. We can always remove a counter from each to kill a 2/2 creature if we don't block it. We could also play Heart of Kiran and Glint-Sleeve Siphoner, giving us 2 vehicles and 3 blockers. You know, at the end of the day, I think I like that the best, because it makes it so that a removal spell really doesn't get our opponent very far unless it can kill the Harvester. And usually when you're behind and at a precarious life total, a very scary life total, having more things on the battlefield is just better. So can we throw an attack here? We can and we should attack sometime, but right now the Scrapheap Scrounger is the only thing that can accrue the Heart of Kiran. And if we attack with the Harvester, our opponent's counterattack might be very good. Still, most of what our opponents showed us is sorcery speed removal. I think that it might be the right play to get in with Harvester and get the life gain now that we have multiple useful blockers here. And we have to start attacking sometime. You're never guaranteed a block. Drawing a card like another Cast Down that can kill the Harvester at instant speed can prevent us from gaining that life. Whereas if we get in for the attack now and gain that life, the opponent has trouble. You know, we've got it in the bag. It's in the books. So knowing when to turn that corner and make those attacks. So this was a good game because we are playing a black aggressive deck. It is definitely designed to be aggressive, but we clearly, because we were on the draw and playing against another aggressive deck, we had to take a controlling role. Not only that, we didn't draw any removal spells. We didn't draw Murder or Fatal Push at all, and our opponent did. So we had to stabilize completely with our creatures and our vehicles. So I hope you learned some things about creature combat, about blocking, about crewing vehicles for blocking from that game. Sometimes you can be a control deck without kill spells if you know how to manage your combat well. Again, we're on the draw. This is a pretty good aggressive hand. Similar to the last one, no removal spells, but good creatures. And when you're an aggressive deck, I think you can keep that. Our opponent plays an island, which is probably a good thing to see. as small, cheap, aggressive creatures are the bane of blue decks most of the time. Alright, looks like our opponent has gone the blue-white route. So, what are we going to play? First, I'm not going to play my swamp yet. I'm going to crash in with the Lookout. Alright. Every time it attacks, each opponent or becomes tapped, each opponent loses a life and we gain a life. So it's like hitting for 2 damage and one life, which is really nice. So what we play next, the main thing that you have to think about here is a card like Essence Scatter, which counters a creature spell for 2 mana. But there's also Syncopate. If our opponent has Essence Scatter, Scrapheap Scrounger is the right play. If they have Syncopate, anything else is the right play. So because our opponent could play either, it's really hard to say what I should do. I'm going to hope they have nothing, which might be wrong, and I'm going to go for this Glint-Sleeve Siphoner, which I think is the highest upside because it can start drawing us cards. And it looks like I am going to hope incorrectly. Well, it resolved, so our opponent didn't have the counterspell. Perhaps they have something else. However, we should be very happy right now that our opponent isn't doing too much with their mana. In 2 turns, they haven't made a play yet. Okay, here's a Seal Away. That will take out the Night Market Lookout. I think that's welcome, considering I would rather keep my Siphoner. Its ability to draw cards for you keeps you going, keeps gassing you up, makes it harder for the opponent to keep up with your plays. I don't... just a moment for a public service announcement to my friends who play Magic out there. Please don't run blue-white control in Brewer's Delight. It's a known quantity, it's one of the best decks in the format, it annoys new players more than most other decks ever would. You should not play it in Brewer's Delight. You haven't brewed anything, you've copied somebody else, we all know it. But that doesn't make you a bad player, there's nothing wrong with net decking, you should learn from others. But when you play it in Brewer's Delight, it's honestly, it just feels rude. It feels like a breach of the contract of the spirit of the game, and that does matter. Some of you may think I'm, saying stupid things when I talk about the spirit of the game, but it matters. It matters to new players, and it matters in general. So please don't play blue-white control in Brewer's Delight if you hear this, and please also don't play red or red-black aggro in Brewer's Delight. Both are very known quantity, high-level decks. You should play other things, because this is a place where those other things can shine. Our opponent may have Settle the Wreckage. We're going to attack into it anyway. I think it's important to know when you can play around a card like Settle the Wreckage that kills all your attackers, and when not to. And right now, I believe you should not play around it. Alright, let's see if we can resolve a Scrapheap Scrounger. Our opponent may also have Fumigate. The good news about Fumigate is our deck doesn't care very much about Fumigate. Our Yahenni can live to it, and can live through it, and the Scrapheap Scrounger can come back. So I think I'll just play out. We may end up sacrificing these Glint-Sleeve Siphoners instead of drawing more cards, but I still won't be down very much. I just won't do much damage next turn. So next turn is also the dreaded Teferi turn, and having a strong board presence going into the Teferi turn is very important. Our opponent still with no play. It feels like it must be a Fumigate. Okay, so I'm going to show you a very important trick with Fumigate. It says, destroy all creatures and gain a life for each creature destroyed in this way. If you have a way to sacrifice your creatures before it resolves, the opponent doesn't gain that life, and we do. It's called Yahenni. So we want to sacrifice all of our creatures to give Yahenni indestructible 3 times. Having it 3 times isn't what matters. Not having the creatures on the board is what matters, so the opponent can't gain this life. And as you see, no life gained. All right. Anything else I can do with haste? I don't see it. So we'll go into combat. We'll go into attacks. We'll send the Yahenni. So I think I can either resolve this Aethersphere Harvester, which is a little clunky, or I can get out the Syndicate Trafficker, which is actually sneakily good. because we can bring back Scrapheap Scrounger and pay 1 mana to make this indestructible. If our opponent has another Fumigate, and I think that they might based on how this game has gone, the fact that they've played almost no cards and that this is only their second play of the game, more indestructible cards sounds very smart at this stage. So, like I talked about in the last game, keeping the Scrapheap Scrounger coming back at the end of the opponent's turn also dodges things like that Fumigate, but you can do it at instant speed, so you can get it whenever you need it. So what's the play? Skyweather Shot. Now see, that says destroy target creature. If we make our creature indestructible in response, the Skyweather Shot won't work. So we're going to bring back our Scrapheap Scrounger, exiling one of our Glint-Sleeve Siphoners. And this is what's known as an onboard trick. Our opponent could have seen it if they looked at our graveyard, but it still might catch them by surprise. Okay, they just cast Revolutionary Rebuff, which says counter target non-artifact spell unless its controller pays 2. I don't think they realize what's happening. We didn't cast a spell. We activated an ability, which you can see there in the corner. It says ability. This means our opponent is Revolutionary Rebuffing their own Skyweather Shot. And as you see, that's what happened. Now we don't even have to sacrifice the Scrounger. The Syndicate Trafficker isn't targeted anymore. So a very rookie mistake by the opponent. And unfortunately for them, they are now dead. Which hopefully they'll learn from that one. An ability is not a spell, and a spell is not an ability. I feel bad for them. I've certainly made mistakes like that in my time. And perhaps they shouldn't be given as hard a time as I gave them before. They might be playing blue-white control, but it looks like they're using cards from the starter deck for the most part. Skyweather Shot, Revolutionary Rebuff. Not normal cards you see in that deck because they're not as strong as the other options. But we do have to take the win. It is a game. You fight to win, and the rewards to the winner. But maybe I shouldn't have been as hard on them, and I do feel bad for them making that play. And hopefully we all learned something from that play. All right, next in line, Bruiser. Dressed up as Liliana, I am dressed up as Jace. I don't know if you follow the lore of Magic. If you're a new player, you probably don't know what I mean by any of that, but basically the storyline that goes with each set and goes with the characters. There's always a storyline going through Magic, and in the storyline, Jace and Liliana, yeah, they were a thing. They had a thing. They got together, then they didn't get together no more, and then they both joined a group called the Gatewatch, but they haven't gotten, as far as we can tell, back together. So it's awkward. It's really awkward. All right, we have an artifact. So playing the Bruiser might be a decent play, as it can attack with Menace next turn. Siphoner, I don't have another way to make energy. And it looks like our opponent's going to play somewhat aggressive, like a Godpharaoh's Gift deck. So what's the right way to attack a Godpharaoh's Gift deck? I think I will play the Bruiser and just try to sneak damage through their creatures for a while. If they can do a Godpharaoh's Gift thing, then they make a whole bunch of creatures on the board. That's very dangerous. Yeah, this will probably be a very tough game, considering that our opponent running Sultai, they might just be a deck full of creatures, play a whole bunch of creatures, make it hard for us to attack. Also, I'm tired of being on the draw. I would like to go first with my aggressive deck, please. All right. So if we play an artifact, this gains Menace, but right now it doesn't need Menace. There's nothing to block it. There could be a flash creature, but I can't think of a flash creature I'm worried about. I think the best thing I can do this turn is also play the Syndicate Trafficker and save like Scrapheap Scrounger for future attacks. Try to get my opponent to play not expecting the artifact, although they should. You have to give your opponent opportunities to make mistakes in this game. So yeah, I'm playing my 3-power guys instead of my Siphoner because I just want to get as much damage through as they let me. And they seem content to be attacking me, which I'm not sure if that's right or not. It depends on what else their deck's going to do. Oh. Well, our opponent is perfectly fine blowing up their own creatures. Who knew? All right, so for this turn, we've drawn way too many lands. Now we have to recover from a sweeper. a little card advantage would really help. So we're going to play our Glint-Sleeve Siphoner and hopefully get to a place where we can draw cards with it soon. And we're going to play a Scrapheap Scrounger, which we don't care if that gets swept up. Our opponent played 1 Golden Demise. They may have another. Squire. All right, let's see if they can come up with another creature. They have a Ravenous Chupacabra. That's very nice. We draw a Murder. But I don't want to murder the Squire, that's for sure. It seems like no matter what we do, our Siphoner is going to die to that Chupacabra. Let's go ahead and attack with our creatures. The Glint-Sleeve Siphoner has Menace. It takes 2 creatures to block it, so it's not afraid right now. And Scrapheap Scrounger I'm happy to trade with because I can get it back out of the graveyard by exiling some creatures that are already there. Opponent's going to take the block. I'm a little surprised. All right, we're going to play our Ballista here because I do want my opponent to use their Chupacabra on it instead of the Siphoner. I want to offer 2 prime targets for that Chupacabra and give my opponent, like, they get the choice, but I think it's not clear which one you should kill. All right, they've chosen the Siphoner, but the Ballista can and probably will become a very large threat in this situation. So it's not clear what they should have been doing. All right. Keep my land a secret for now. Let's attack with the Ballista. Opponent likely won't block. They know that we can pump our Ballista after the block. But they may be trying to fill their graveyard. So if they block, it sort of gives that away. All right, they do. We'll pump our Ballista to a 3/3 after the blocks. And then we'll play our land and we'll say go because we have a Scrounger in the graveyard and we can bring it back at the end of our opponent's turn. Just a little note about the gameplay. You can set reminders. Like in this case, I know I want to do an effect at the end of my opponent's turn. If you're worried about perhaps hitting the end of turn button or missing it, you can put a little stop like right here. This is the end step cleanup. And if you do that, it won't skip it. It'll let you click through everything that happens in that phase. Our opponent sees a Thrashing Brontodon, which is very annoying and can take down our Ballista regardless of the size. Ugh. All right. So like here, I'm going to hit end turn and it just jumps, but still stops here so I can make this play that I really wanted to make. Another land. This is getting really unfortunate. So I have a decision to make about whether or not to use a card like Fatal Push to get through this Seeker Squire or let it block. If I let it block, I think I'm missing out on damage, which that bothers me. So I'm going to push it. I think we have to try to end this game by getting as much damage to our opponent as possible. Because whatever they have, whether it's a Scarab God, Godpharaoh's Gift, Muldrotha the Gravetide, these are all expensive, rare, and mythic cards that are going to be more powerful than what our deck does. So we need to get ourselves in a position to end the game as quickly as we can. Our opponent has plenty of mana if they draw those cards to do things. And there comes the Gravetide. So what can our opponent do with it? They have 1 black. If they had left up a blue, they could have played... They could have at least played the Storm Tamer, but they didn't. So this is going to be a 6/6 creature. It's big and it's scary, but our opponent is going to lose the game because it doesn't matter how big your creature is. Unless it has indestructible, Murder don't care. Murder just kills. So we'll do that. We'll pump our Ballista 1 more time, and we'll combat, attack, and all attack for exactly 8 damage, and complete our 3-0 run in Brewer's Delight. Walking Ballista really flexing muscles there. I do think it's quite possible that our opponent should have been destroying it, both with the Chupacabra and with the Brontodon. When you have a lot of mana, normally you just flood out, can't do anything, and you die. But when you have a Ballista on the battlefield and you have a bunch of mana, you have a machine gun that you get to reload every turn. All right. Well, here, let's see what we got in our rewards. It looks like we got the cat rewards. Long Tusk Cub, Sacred Cat, but then you get the rares. Regal Caracals, Adorned Pouncer, and another Adorned Pouncer. Excellent. All right, so going on this video, we are 34 minutes in. I could leave it here for the day. How are we doing on quests? We actually still have a good amount to do on these quests. So I think I don't really want to jump full quick constructed, although it's a very good place to grind. Because Brewer's Delight is ending soon, I think the best thing I can do is get more of this Brewer's Delight action. So let's get in there for some more. And run it back. I don't consider the mono black deck nearly as good as the red black or the red deck, but it is probably well above the green deck and the white deck and the blue deck as far as like which decks in this starting group are strong. And it is monocolor, so you don't need to get lands for it to upgrade it. To turn it into mono black zombies or mono black aggro, there are a number of rare cards you need to use, so it is a bit hard on your rare wild cards. But it is very playable as is, and I don't mind the matchup with the red deck. While I said that I think the red deck is better against the field, I think that the matchup between these two is a lot closer than people think. One of the things that makes it tough is whether or not you play a card here like Syndicate Trafficker, which can die to all kinds of things, but especially Goblin Chain Whirler. But I think in this spot we do. I think we go for it and try to assert aggression. Bomat Courier is such an annoying card, but it also gives our opponent a late game card advantage engine. But one thing that the red deck isn't built to do well is block. Ooh, blue. Perhaps our opponent isn't just playing mono red. Perhaps they have some wizards in their back pocket. Blink of an eye. That doesn't kill the Trafficker, it returns it, which is a big difference. Now we have it to play again next turn. That's very exciting. You know what else is exciting? A card that is a 2/3 Death Touch lifelink against an aggressive deck. However, I still don't want it to die just yet, so I'm going to play Yahenni. Yahenni is a very good card against decks that can't remove it. I'm a little worried because I saw the blink of an eye, but this definitely helps us assert ourselves as the beatdown with the haste. And it's hard to remove Yahenni. We can just sacrifice other creatures instead, and when our opponent's creatures die, Yahenni gets bigger. We haven't seen that yet, because we frankly haven't drawn much removal. But in this game, we have Fatal Push in our hand, and it looks like our opponent is a deck that can and will be getting trouble from the Fatal Push. Our opponent's going to play the Lava Runner. Once they have 2 instants or sorceries in their graveyard, it's a 2/2 with haste, which haste meaning it can attack this turn. And our opponent's opt means that it can do that. So our opponent, even being behind in the life total, is committed to racing. They want to race us. It's interesting, I think. And now that the Bomat's on 3 cards, we have to start thinking about killing it. And it looks like our opponent also has a Lightning Bolt or a Shock, something that's holding their priority. Although I guess Bomat Courier holds the priority. I should stop talking about that because I'm often just wrong about what's holding the priority, and then I start playing around the wrong thing. I too can overthink these things. Now, because using the Fatal Push here will pump our Yahenni, we want to do more damage this turn. So let's fire away at this Bomat Courier. We want to do it now so we have a bigger Yahenni to attack with. Our opponent's going to respond with a Wizard's Lightning on Yahenni. We can certainly sacrifice this Diregraf Ghoul to make it bigger, and I think that's a smart idea. I really wish that I could Fatal Push this in response, but that would only make us a 3/3, and we'd still die to the Lightning Strike. The Wizard's Lightning, I mean. So yes, we'll sacrifice this creature. Gain Indestructible. Kill that. Add a +1/+1 counter to Yahenni. You get this funny graphic. That's a 3/0. The Indestructible is keeping it alive. I'm going to play Trafficker and not Gifted Aetherborn, and my reasoning for that is I want this to be a creature that comes down when my opponent is out of Lightning Bolts. I don't really want to sacrifice it. That lifelink could be crucial to this game. So we want to make it, when you have a crucial threat that costs similar to other threats you could play, it often makes sense if you know your opponent has a lot of kill spells, like these red decks, to save it. Just save it. All right, because here we go. Our opponent is lightning striking our Yahenni. We're sacrificing our Trafficker to keep it alive. We'd rather not do, we wouldn't want to sacrifice this Gifted Aetherborn. It's a much stronger card in the matchup because of the lifelink. Gaining life can really tilt a race between two aggressive decks, as we saw with the Aethersphere Harvester a few games ago. Alright, we're going to play the Scrounger for sure. This is the kind of creature we love to sacrifice to Yahenni. We're going to Fatal Push this Lava Runner. It's going to make Yahenni a 4/4, so it's out of Lightning Bolt range now. Our opponent will need something very interesting to kill it, and I'm sure that they wish they still had this Blink of an Eye that they cast very early in the game. Open fire, yep, we will sacrifice it. Our opponent pointing all their lightning bolts at all these creatures, but none of it can deal with Yahenni. Okay, is it time to bring out the Scrounger or to play the Aetherborn? We're kind of closing in on the end of the game. So I'm going to play the Aetherborn. If our opponent finds a Blink of an Eye, at least Aetherborn can gain us some life. Although, when we're not under pressure, that also feels fine too. Alright, that cycling will draw them a new card. The music cut out. Music gave up on us. I would like it to come back. I often find it really awkward when the arena music just gives up. Champion of Wits. Okay. That'll draw 2 and discard 2. And it counts as a wizard. So it lets our opponent play their Wizard's Lightning for 1 mana. It also provides a blocker that can get in front of this Yahenni, which our opponent needs to get in front of it. There is the Wizard's Lightning. So we'll sacrifice for Indestructible. And this is going to give us Revolt. It's a good combo with the Fatal Push. Now that we have Revolt, we can kill the Champion of Wits with the Fatal Push. It's a 3 casting cost, not a 2. So you have to have Revolt to kill it. But now that we've done that, pumps Yahenni. Our opponent has no blockers. We're trying to complete a quest, so I'll play 1 more black spell here. And we'll attack. It's a little bit bad manners to play spells before then, but as I have to keep reminding myself, that's probably not true anymore in the quest, with the quest dynamic added to the game. As an old school Magic player, the first thing I think when somebody has onboard lethal, which means they can just attack and win the game, and instead they play some spells, is that that's very rude. But in the quest environment, that's probably not true anymore. If all the videos are going to get this quiet because the arena music goes out, I may have to find a playlist of like songs I can use on YouTube. If this were on Twitch, I'd definitely be jamming all kinds of like 80s montage training songs, like really exciting, pump you up stuff. But our opponent's mulliganing to absolute 0. That's not good. That's never what you want to see. They haven't left. Okay, they have left. Sorry, opponent. Hate it when that happens. I've told you to ignore ranks, but for what it's worth, we ranked up. As you see, no gold, no rewards for ranking up, no nothing. So try not to think about it, is my best advice. So what I really want here are the Storm cards that you can get in Brewer's Delight. They have some really awesome cards. What I don't want are the Revel in Riches cards, which are not very useful. Revel in Riches, quite honestly, is not a... I wouldn't even... It's just a very rough deck to get wins with. You can, and we might brew it here if we win this Brewer's Delight, if we get it out of Brewer's Delight. Oh, it looks like it's our turn for the mulligans. I can't really keep this. It has no pressure. And now we have the dreaded 1 Aether Hub hand, but we have a Swamp on top. So that's something. At least gives us some pressure on turn 2. But you'll notice we can't keep a hand with no lands. We can't keep a hand that's all lands or like 5 lands. This is a deck that requires pressure. So we have to mulligan to pressure. If we are not pressuring our opponent, we are losing because our opponent's slowly building resources and playing stronger cards than we can deal with our deck. For example, if our opponent played a Planeswalker for 5 mana, something like a Nissa Voice of Zendikar, which everybody gets, and we can't kill it with our creatures, it's just over, you know? Murder doesn't solve it. Fatal Push doesn't solve it. So we have to have creatures on the board. We have to be able to attack that Nissa, or we just have to be able to remove the 5/5 it creates and kill the opponent. So that's why you have to have early creatures to keep a hand. Our opponent on some kind of Abzan, and they started out with a Fatal Push. It's very good for them. 1-for-1 removal is very good for them. And if they're not playing creatures, this hand is very, very bad for us. I hate playing an early Ballista this way, but I do feel like we have to. We have to keep pressure on the opponent. We have to keep a board presence. And every damage point could count. So here's Karn. This is exactly when I was talking about Planeswalkers and I used Nissa as the example, I very easily could have used Karn. This is exactly the kind of problem we do not want. And our choice is binding or binding. Yeah, nice indeed, opponent. Yes, go ahead and talk it up. All right, so we're probably playing the Bruiser. The good news is we only have 2 Aetherborns and 1 Bruiser. Whatever our opponent uses the binding on, it's not the end of the world. Of course, with our luck, we'll draw the other Aetherborn potentially. But we should try to kill this Karn. I don't know how that will work out. It's unclear how many mythic super friends our opponent is going to play. But we haven't done enough damage to our opponent yet to justify going face and ignoring Karn. They'll just draw too many cards. But as it is, I think we're already very, very disadvantaged. Our opponent's going to take another Ixalan's Binding into their hand. That's actually okay. Our opponent's going to spam Eldest Reborn. So what are we sacrificing? We have to sacrifice a creature. I suppose sacrificing the Ballista makes the most sense since it's on 1. Now the problem here with Eldest Reborn is, of course, once it gets to 5, they get a Planeswalker out of a graveyard, which means they'll just get their Karn back. So I think this means we do have to go face. I don't think we have a choice. Just have to ignore most of our opponent's effects. Now, do I want to discard this land or play it? Remember, Eldest Reborn says each opponent discards a card, and I think I want to discard the land. There's only a few things for 4 mana in the deck, so the odds of drawing another land before we draw those 4-drops is actually higher, and these Fatal Pushes can help clear the way from the Karnstructs that are going to come along. It can also protect our Scrapheap Scrounger from Ixalan's Binding. But right now we're very unlikely to win no matter what. Wow. That's really rough. I suppose I'll take the one that costs more mana. It is instant speed. We're going to have to protect our Scrounger from it, probably by Fatal Pushing our own card. My opponent just kind of debating right now how best to win this game. They're going to play Ixalan's Binding. They're going to target the Bruiser, I'm guessing, since it does the most damage. We could push it into our graveyard and exile it with Scrounger to make sure we have more things to exile with Scrounger, but I actually need to exile this Ballista so that, well, the opponent getting a Ballista back with Karn doesn't do anything. That is a good question. It might be a smart play, especially while my opponent doesn't have Forsake the Worldly open. But I'm not sure what else will kill the Scrounger. Possibly another Eldest Reborn. Yeah, I'm going to make this play. As weird as it is, I'm going to Fatal Push my own creature so I can exile it with Scrapheap Scrounger, so I have an extra creature to get back in the future. The opponent trying to get a Ballista back with Eldest Reborn will not matter. So we make sure that we exile the Bruiser, which is something they could get back. And a Fleetwheel Cruiser, that is punishment, my friends. That is punishment. Because if we had kept our land, we could cruise this turn. But as it is, we might still get in with the Cruiser later. The Forsake the Worldly will be a big problem. Playing around that will be difficult. But it does require our opponent to leave up 3 mana. It is not cheap. So Aethersphere Reborn gets back Ballista. It dies because it comes back as a 0/0. The opponent doesn't get a chance to put mana to it if they just return it to the battlefield instead of cast it. So it goes right back to the graveyard. I do think the opponent may try to forsake the Scrounger. I'm just not sure when. Our opponent's getting back a Seal Away. That's very annoying.
What was lost is now returned.
And here comes the Seal Away. Let's see what they target. They target the Scrounger. I'm going to push the Scrounger in response. Our opponent may respond with Forsake the Worldly, but if they do, that clears the road for the Fleetwheel Cruiser, and that's what we need. So it gives us a chance. If we draw land, we can cruise. They allow that to resolve. Probably because once I've done this, I will just pay the mana, bring it back, and then they can use it. Okay, they tap out. For an Eldest Reborn. Well, if we draw land, we can win this game. If we sacrifice this Aetherborn and keep our Scrounger. And the card I most want out of the graveyard would be the Aetherborn. So we let this resolve. We sacrifice the Gifted Aetherborn. Then with our opponent tapped out, all information's been revealed for this turn. We get back Scrapheap Scrounger. We cross our fingers. And this game that I don't think it was possible to win comes down to a draw step and we miss. My heart is broken. However, it's still not over. Our opponent will probably forsake the worldly on this Scrounger. We have to discard a card, which is too bad, because I'm going to discard this Fatal Push, but it could have been so useful in protecting the Scrounger from an Ixalan's Binding. But if I'm my opponent now, I'd Ixalan's Binding this Scrounger. And it looks like that's the play. Keeping Forsake the Worldly open means it's very likely, very, very likely, our Cruiser will never get to hit.
How convenient. An excellent choice.
Another Eldest Reborn, I suppose. They're expensive. Alright, what are we getting back? We don't have anything to get back right now. Nothing that matters, so there's nothing wrong with playing this Glint-Sleeve Siphoner and hoping. But the Eldest Reborn will just make us sacrifice it again. But we're just trying to get our opponent to spend their mana, and if they don't have Forsake the Worldly open, we could still sneak in. Of course, I think our opponent will mine us and get back Walking Ballista, and that's pretty much game over. Because I don't know how we would overcome that. No, they go for Vraska. This might leave an open door.
All hands on deck!
Oh, it's going to make a treasure, so our opponent will still have Forsake the Worldly open. Well,
some solutions must be built.
Again, we need a window, but we're not going to get it. We only have one Fleetwheel Cruiser, so it's not like I can play this one and hope to draw another. So I guess we play the land, say go, and just hope the opponent messes up. Or that we draw a lot of Walking Ballistas in a row. Man, I can't believe we had a shot. Our opponent will never know.
Good choice.
Unless they watch this. Wouldn't be the first time. Alright, we'll give them a Baffling End. By the way, this is a deck that was played at the Pro Tour. So, you know, Brewer's Delight, I guess. It is on the Pro Tour Decklist page, which is where our opponent got it from. It's kind of frustrating, but it is what it is. People will play anything and anywhere they can. If you're gonna pick a Pro Tour deck, though, it makes a lot more sense to play it in something competitive and see how it really holds up. All right. We have to discard a card to the Eldest Reborn here. Still hoping for some kind of ridiculous mistake. I don't see how that happens, though, with our opponent making tokens every turn.
Decisive action is needed.
Yeah, I can concede. Too bad. Our first loss of the day, though, which is a lot better than we had yesterday. And we finished our 750 gold quest. So that's 2 thumbs up. I would also like to give a reminder. I received some feedback that the videos are long, and there were some good ideas posted. One thing you can do is watch the video in pieces. YouTube does save your spot, so you can come back and finish it. You can watch half of it one day and come back to finish it the next day. The other option is double speed. I sound a little bit like a chipmunk on double speed, but it can help you get through the videos faster if you need to. And I know from experience that you can adjust to listening on double speed and become better at comprehending fast audio talk. I listen to all of my audiobooks and most of my podcasts on at least 1.5 speed, and on some of them for double speed. So it's worth looking into. It helps you be more productive. And if you're taking your Magic experience somewhat seriously, more productive is a good thing. The faster you get off the speed, the better you'll do. Anyway, that was anticlimactic. Our opponent, I guess, with more land issues, very anticlimactic Brewer's Delight. We lost a really tough game. I think we played to the best of our ability. And then we had 2 mana screwed opponents just scooping before anything really happened. I don't even remember what our other win was. Let's claim our prize. Please not... Oh, more cats? Interesting. So now I have 4 Regal Caracals and 4 Adorned Pouncers? I thought that... I didn't know you could win the same thing twice. Alright, well, we've learned something today. We have 20 hours left of Brewer's Delight, so I'm going to definitely do some tomorrow and hope to hit the storm cards that I need. We may have to marathon Brewer's Delight a little bit before it goes away. It'll be replaced by something else. It's going to be, I think, fun to explore these formats. Before we go, let's crack a pack. A Reliquary Tower is sometimes useful. The rest of this, not so much. But Isolate, not so much either, unfortunately. A card that can only exile permanents with converted mana cost 1 is a bit too narrow. It doesn't hit enough things. But we've made some progress. I think we're up. We started with 10,000 gold. We're up over 4,300 now, despite losing a Quick Constructed and doing 2 Brewer's Delights, which do not have gold rewards. So we're on a good pace with gold. My plan is on Friday. Friday. What we're going to do is I'm going to spend, I'm going to take an amount of gold. I'm thinking 2,000 right now that I'm going to keep as the emergency fund for entering events. And I'm going to spend the rest on packs. I'm going to talk about which packs I buy and why. Then we're going to get some wild cards from that process. And we have some right now that we've bought. And we're going to take those wild cards and what we open in our packs, and we're going to go upgrade a deck. And we're going to start with our strongest deck, the Red-Black Starter deck, our Super Grinder deck. So we're going to talk about exactly what I would craft to make this deck even better and more competitive, to be kind of our go-to if we need to win a Quick Constructed event and grind out more golden cards. So that's the plan for Friday. Tomorrow we're going to hit Brewer's Delight a little harder before it goes away, try to win some of those mono blue storm cards, because that would be a very fun deck to build. But for today, this is the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you're really enjoying the adventures of Young CGB, a series for new players, all free to play. That's the plan. Do let me know in the comments, and if you are enjoying it, please say so in Discord. Like the video, share the video. Tell your other friends who are getting into Magic or are still into other games that may want to get into Magic to come on over. And if you need a beta code, come over to the Discord server and join the beta codes channel. All right, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Later.